Welcome to Pondering Play and Therapy,
where we set out to explore the importance of play in our everyday lives and how this can also be therapeutic. We'll be discussing our own experiences in the hope that others may ponder play in their own lives too.
Welcome to this episode with me, Philippa.
And me, Julie. This week, we thought we would ponder, can play help us feel safe? And do we need to feel safe in order to play? So, Philippa, this idea about play and safety primarily came from you to start with. Tell me where that idea came from. What prompted that?
Well, it was from some training I've been on. It was called Compassion-Focused Therapy, and it was an introduction. It was a 3-day training, and it was really interesting, really, about how we need to be compassionate to ourselves. One of the talks that the presenters gave was around play and how play can help with our nervous system and helping us to feel safe, because when we are feeling stressed, overwhelmed, scared, worried, we're in our survival brain. So that part of our brain that says the world's not safe, the world's not okay, I might die, or I'm at least under severe threat. And really, you're just organized to keep yourself safe and keep yourself alive, really. And being playful at those times might help us to maybe come out of that state, or might be more difficult. And I guess that's what I was thinking is, can we play at times when maybe we are feeling unsafe psychologically, physically, in a relationally?
Yeah, that's word. Yeah, go for it.
Where does play fit in all that? Because we know that play happens all in the world, in all different manner of places. There's not always complete safety in those places. So that's really what I was thinking about.
So see if I've got this right, thinking about if I'm in a stressful situation and even a dangerous situation, can play be possible? But primarily, can play help me get to a more safe position?
Yeah. It might not be physically help you, might it? But emotionally, it might be able to help you, or relationally, it might be able to help you. So that's one part of it. And the other part is, can you even play if you're in an unsafe place? I guess one of the things that we often see on social media is children maybe experiencing raw and really extreme environmental factors, famine, desolation, but you see children play with a football or skipping, or there is a form of play. And I suppose that just made me think about, what do those children need in order to play in a very physically unsafe environment? Yeah, so it's the two. How does play help us in those things, and how can we play when we're in those moments?
So thinking about, even if it's not a physical danger, if it's a psychological danger where my mind, my body, everything about me, my whole nervous system is saying, I'm unsafe, I'm unsure, I'm under threat. I might have all my physical needs met. I might have a home, I might have food, I might have family, I might have an education, but still I might psychologically feel unsafe. Is it possible to play in that situation? And yeah, I'm thinking about lots and lots of children that I've worked with, and you and I both worked as therapists with children. We both know that we have a lot of play in our everyday lives, within our families, with our friends. But I'm thinking about particularly many, many children that I've met in a therapy situation who are physically safe. They might be in a therapy room in their school, and their school is perceived by them to be a safe place. So physically, their environment is safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I've experienced their psychological danger that they feel when they come into the therapy room, or when they're in the playground, when they're in their classroom, and everything feels very, very unsafe and overwhelming for them. And our question then is, can those children find moments of play even when they're in psychological danger?
Yeah.
And thinking back to lots and lots of children, I've experienced the children who come in and I've hardly turned around from the door and they're in and they're playing. I've not met them before. This is their first time in the therapy room. And what I usually say to children when they come in is, if it was you, Philippa, I'd be saying, Philippa, this is your time to play and talk in just about any way you like. Shall we see what happens?
Mm-hmm.
I've even got that on my lips. They're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I have those children, and maybe you know some of those children as well. But I've also experienced many children who, even coming across the doorway into the room, is deeply distressing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very uncomfortable. And it might take several weeks for them to get in the door. And just thinking about how I try to create psychological safety for them just by my presence,
Mm-hmm.
just by breathing, just by keeping the door open. Sometimes I come in and I sit in the room, and the child may just be hovering at the doorway for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes, and then may step over the threshold. But that's them showing me how unsafe they feel, and me giving them the space and the trust that says, you can be okay in this room, but I'll wait for you. This is your space. So I don't know if you've experienced that with some of the children you work with. You work in a different way to me quite often, but children, families who come into a therapy situation where they're feeling unsafe, and how does play fit with that?
It makes me think about it. And we've talked before when we meet about the importance of the third thing, which is a Winnicott, if people want the theory behind it, but it's that the transitional object, really. So we've got a big slinky in our reception, a few steps, and sometimes it's just sitting and letting the slinky go down the steps and just celebrating the achievement of the slinky, which indirectly celebrates the achievement of the child. It might be just sitting and notice the trainers or something that's maybe not directly connected to the child. And I think if we think about toddlers and young people in our everyday lives, often you wait for that young person, the child, to come to you, don't you? You might kind of help that along by finding something that you think they might be interested in, whether it's a book or a car or a dog or something like that, that they then can kind of be interested in this kind of third thing that then allows them. And I wonder about that, the importance of respecting that space, create some safety when it's an unknown. And I wonder if the third thing, when there's a known and the environment is unsafe, if the third thing, like maybe the football or the skipping rope, if that kind of represents a relational safety.
But I might be relating to the object.
Yeah.
And then I can possibly relate to that object with somebody else. So I might skip on my own, and that's also play. I can play with the ball on my own, and that's me finding some psychological safety with an object and with myself. And then, so I would call that play.
Yeah.
I can play music on my own. I can play with a ball on my own. I can play with a piece of blue tack on my own or a piece of bubble wrap. That's relating to myself through play. And certainly I can find things like that very calming, very regulating. If I'm in a stressful situation, to have something in my hands that I create and play with. But then we're also thinking about how we get relational play going in a state of either physical or emotional danger, unsafety, if that's a word, and how the object, that third object, can help create the relationship, can create the play. So relating to myself, relating to the object, but also relating to you through the object can feel much, much safer for the two people involved than relating directly. What we sometimes talk about as primary intersubjectivity. It's like just the direct relating.
Yeah.
And that can be so difficult and so threatening and so painful, certainly for a lot of the children and families that we work with. And so certainly from what I understand of the way you work as well, is that having an object in between or an object that is the focus of everybody's attention can really allow the relationship to get off the ground because it feels less threatening to relate through an object. So through blowing bubbles, through throwing a ball, through, as I've experienced, a car coming across the room, I send a car out towards a child who's maybe had their back to me for most of that session and or for several weeks has sort of sat in silence in the room. They've made it into the room, but I sense that child might be still feeling very, very uncomfortable. And sometimes I will risk sending something across the room, almost like as an invitation to say, I'm here. And so often what I've met, whether it's a ball or a car, something that moves, but I gently sent across the room as an invitation. So often that has been returned to me. And then we've set up the dialogue. I don't know, the car, the ball, whatever, going across the room. And the child gradually feeling the safety with me, the containment of me and the room, and sends the object back. And we start that dialogue, start that playfulness together. But I know how slowly and carefully I need to go with that child so that I don't add to their distress, add to their psychological distress by making therapy also. Well, I was going to say making therapy painful, but I think it is also quite painful. I don't know if you have the experience of I say, I work with children as a therapist through play. And so often I'll be, that's nice. That's lovely. And I just want to say, gosh, the play isn't always safe. Well, I'm hoping play is always safe, but it's certainly not always comfortable.
Yes.
For many of the children and families we work with, play can feel really weird.
Yeah. And I think it's hard. And I think that's something we've talked about is that play. And I guess I wonder if that's part of what being safe in play is that you can have a whole range of emotions, that actually you can be sad in play and you can be angry in play and you can be joyful in play and excited, but there's a range of it. And I suppose it makes me also think about in families, how those emotions in play can be really helpful, especially if you've got teenagers or young people that are experiencing change and thinking about their identity. It's a really hard time for the teenagers. It's a great time, but it can be a hard time as well, can't it? And how play can help some of those emotions, whether it's in a therapy space, whether it's in a home, or even whether it's in a peer group playing sports or stuff like that, just to get maybe rid of some of those angst that you get, or the crossness that you might have with your parents. How can play support us to do these less kind of what are often seen as negative emotions, but we like to think that actually all emotions are as equally valid and as equally important. And play needs to make space for all of those, don't they? Yeah. And I just think it can be helpful to sit with those, or to use play to express them, or to get rid of them, help you to regulate back from them.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying there, as a chance to almost play with my emotions playfully, being able to try out different ways of expressing things, to do that more safely in a play situation. I'm even thinking about playing a piece of music. I could play something very, very sad and poignant in music. And I know that it's going to resolve. I know it's maybe got a melody, and it's going to rise and it's going to fall. And I can express that in music in a way that I might not be able to do just by talking with somebody. So I'm thinking about playing with some of the members of my family. Some of us play musical instruments, and I feel deeply connected. My nieces or my brother or others in my family when I'm making music with them. And I wouldn't express that feeling just sitting having coffee and talking with them. But when we get our instruments out and we play, something can be expressed that is beyond words.
Oh.
And I wonder about that also in sport, in just playing around with an idea, even us working together to do this podcast. There are times when, for me, it feels very unsafe what we're doing. We've talked about this a lot. You're feeling in a much more safe position. I'm feeling in a much less safe position. But we keep meeting and we keep playing with the ideas. How are we going to do this? Pressing buttons on the computer we've never pressed before. And how, by playing, I can come to safety. That I don't have to, I mean, our original question was, do I have to be safe in order to play? I'm wondering whether we do, and whether play in itself, playfulness, even though it can be scary, it can be sad, it can be overexciting, but play in itself can bring us to a state of safety.
Yeah. And I wonder, I suppose it makes me think about several things, really. So one is just thinking about how playfulness can help you to regulate. Just being sensory play, if you're a toddler, having rough and tumble with your parents, how that can actually help our body to understand what's going on, and what we need and what we don't need. And so we move from a place of maybe feeling unsafe, being overwhelmed by our emotions, or overwhelmed by the environment we're in, or what we perceive as a lack of needs. So we're not going to have these biscuits before lunch, and we're hungry, and our lunch is being prepared, so we're really cross about that because we feel like our needs are being met. And that's, when you're a little person, that's quite an unsafe place to be, isn't it? When you're feeling hungry. But actually being playful and either rough and tumble, or, just helping them to chop food or stuff like that, helps them to one, be able to know, actually, I can manage these big feelings. It's actually okay. And I've got somebody alongside me who's helping me do this, and I know I'm going to get my needs met and I eat. So is a tool for helping children, young people, teenagers know that these big feelings are survivable, and they're survivable in a way that feels containing for them, maybe because there's something else along, whether it's whether it's another person, or whether it's a third thing like music or like football, or there's something that is helping them. So it made me think about that. The other thing it made me think about was about distraction. So one is about moving from unsafe to safe, so that actually we're feeling unsafe and we can use play to help us move to a place where maybe we feel a little bit more safe, or there's something around that's helping us. That relational component with whatever it is creating more safety for us. But I wonder if there's a part where actually the unsafeness, if that's a word, remains. Yeah, so it's going to remain. It's not going to go, but play can provide a moment of relief from it. So there's a moment where you can just be in the moment and not kind of immersed in what's going on around or inside or with, but there's just this moment of interaction with another person, with a toy, with a piece of music, with whatever it is, but there's something that just gives a moment of relief. Yeah, and you could be safe in that moment, even if you're not safe. Yeah, completely, or in the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we think of at school in the UK, we call our recesses, we call them break times. It gives us a break from what might be much more difficult for some children. Some children it's not. Sometimes break time is the most difficult time for some children. But yeah, having a playful moment as a distraction from perhaps a situation that is not going to change. A child or an adult living in a dangerous household where there is the risk of violence, where there is the risk of a breakdown, where there is a family member living with an illness. That is not going to go away. It's not going to be relieved. But having a moment of playfulness within that day can be huge for that child, for that family member. And I'm thinking some of the other therapists that I help consult with and supervise work with families who've experienced domestic abuse. And some are still living in that situation. And we talk a lot about when the child comes for therapy. Well, lots of these children coming to therapy who have experienced severe traumatic, violent situations in their households don't bring that into the therapy room. Mm-hmm. We've become very curious about that. And the goals of the referrers, the goals of the funders might all be to do with, we want this child to be able to have a place to process what has happened to them. But lo and behold, many of these children seem to come into their therapy situations and not want any of that to come into the room. No. They want to play. They want to be enjoyed. They want to have 45, 50 minutes of not thinking about that, not bringing that into the rooms. And we've been sort of tussling with, so is that the therapy that they need? But we work in a very child-centered way, which says this is your space to do and say just about anything you like and see what happens. For the child to bring what they absolutely need. And what I'm seeing and what I'm wondering about is actually what those children need is an hour a week to be with somebody who knows what's happened, who's acknowledged, I know big bad thing that has happened. A parent has died. Well, a sibling has got a terminal illness. I know the big bad things in your life. Your grown-ups have let me know about that. What do you want to do? Well, you want to play snakes and ladders. You want to play hide and seek. You want to play those houses. without a traumatic story. And I just find that I find it so interesting, but I find it so hopeful that in great distress, a child has found a way of inviting a safe adult into playfulness. And I have a memory of some children who will say things like, I'll say, oh, I've really enjoyed playing with you today because I genuinely have enjoyed, I felt pleasure. And sometimes they'll say things like, I really enjoy you enjoying me, is kind of what they're conveying.
Yeah.
Because everybody around them is, oh, terrible things have happened to you. Oh, you're living in this horrible situation. Oh, poor you. And they've been given permission in the therapy room to be enjoyed, to still be funny, to still be daft, to still muck around. And I can see the sense of relief on their faces. But it's not the therapy I was expecting to do with them. I expected them to bring their trauma into the room. And I have to respect that. I have to go with what that child feels they are able to do and want to do. They want to be enjoyed. They want to laugh.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about, again, teenagers in a family home, and maybe that's because I've had teenagers. And that can be a time, I think, for lots of parental relationships where there's a lot more conflict, and that it can feel like it's all conflict, it's all shouting and nagging, but no, not all relationships are like that, but teenagers, it's their time in life to go out and start to make connections with their peer groups, move for independence, and that for everybody creates a disjointedness. And I suppose what made me think about was that they still also, like the child who's coming to therapy, still need to be enjoyed, and they still need to be delighted in, and they still need to know that their parents or their adults are still amazed by them and interested in them. And actually, for parents, I wonder if you also still need to know that there is this connection that you've had when they were a toddler, or maybe when they're in that kind of middle age of childhood. And I wonder if there's moments of play that can happen with teenagers that brings that same sense for both the parent of we still do have that relationship, and knowing and trusting that all the stuff you've been putting in there is still in there. You're finding a new way forward. And for the teen and the adolescent, there's that bit of, okay, my parents are still interested in me. They are still enjoyed with me. They don't just nag me to clean my room and do my homework and get in on time and don't use my vape or whatever it is that's going on. That it can bring those moments of delight for both the therapist and the child, the adolescents and the parent, I guess for grandparents and having toddlers, babies, then get the delight of having that again when their children are no adults. So there's these moments, I guess, of delight that break from oh gosh, this is really hard.
Yeah, a respite, just a moment, even if it's just 5 minutes of playing with an older person in the family, perhaps who has dementia or cannot connect in ways that they've connected in the past, but finding a way of connecting, whether it's through song. Sometimes a song can spark off a connection out of confusion. A game like Slap or Dominoes, where the rules are fairly straightforward and maybe remembered from a time before dementia. And then to be able to enter into that again, to find those 10, 15 minutes of connection with somebody who isn't able to join in with sort of social play and understand conversations and sort of the bubbliness of a family or a care home or a hospital or wherever they're living, but can connect through one tiny little moment in a game, or just passing, like I do with those cars across the ring with children, passing a balloon or a ball across to somebody else, that can take somebody who's perhaps living with the confusion of something like dementia, to take them out of that distress and confusion into a moment of connection through play. And still be, as you said, I love that word, to be delighted in. Is that not what we're all after? To be enjoyed and delighted in by at least one other human being.
Yeah.
Or a pet, which is the next episode.
Yeah. And that's a great place, I think, to end this podcast. But I think that what we are feeling, and we're only experts in our own lives, we're not experts in other people's lives, but what I'm thinking that we've come to the conclusion of is that play can provide safety, even if it's just for moments. It can provide relational safety. It can provide moments of safety in places where you're not safe in an overall situation, but you can have some psychological safety in a moment with a third thing, or even relationally. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to sum it up any better than that, Julie, as we come to an end.
Well, this is what happens every time we ponder these things. And just to let our listeners know, we do have a script, but we never stick to it. And every time we've recorded this one, we've had a few false starts with this one. Every time it's been quite different, but I kind of like where we've got to today, especially the kind of respite part of play, that it's okay to play and laugh and joke, even in dire circumstances.
Yeah.
That we need humor. Maybe humor would be another episode.
Absolutely.
But the next episode, we're going to start thinking about animals and play and pets and play and pets and play and therapy. Anyway, we'll save that up to next time.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for listening to Pondering with Play and Therapy.